Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of On Air with Owen, and today I'm excited to be joined by Lisa Dempster, and Lisa is a director at Sales Consult, and she joins me today to be talking about, well, actually we've got quite a broad subject collection today. We're going to be talking about lots of things that Lisa's learned over the last 15, 16 years in and around sales, including things like discounting, pipeline management, how to recruit great salespeople, which I know is very topical right now, and a number of other things that I think will come into this conversation. So we're going to keep it fairly broad. Before we get into topic, Lisa, firstly, thank you. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
Really well, thank you, Owen, and thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Pleasure. Really happy to have you on here, and looking forward to listening and learning from your experience. Before we dive into topic, we always like to give people 2 minutes to tell us a bit about who's Lisa, who's Sales Consult. Let our audience know a little bit about yourself, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Owen. So, like you introduced me fantastically well there, I'm Lisa Dempster. I'm the company director at a Staffordshire-based sales consultancy. So, Sales Consult help our customers by either hiring top sales talent for them or training and developing their current top sales talent. In a nutshell, we genuinely care about everything that is sales. We have a wealth of experience, and we genuinely believe that about the nuances throughout the sales process, which allows us really to help our audience better. Like I said, whether that's finding top sales talent or developing the ones that are already in there.
Love it. Can you help me with something? Just a bit of context. I think as we get through these, I'd love for people to know the types of clients you work with and the sort of industries and sectors and that sort of stuff, because I think that might just help shape people's interpretation of whatever advice and input we get.
Of course. So typically one of our customers, what do they look like? They are conceptual sales. So it's service-led sales propositions as opposed to product-based. The turnover is around 2 million up to 10 million. So it's an SME market. Absolutely. It's organizations that have started out fantastically well, had some real good growth, but are now wanting to nurture their teams into honing their skill set, making sure that they're really sharp on their skill set, and also now wanting to maybe recruit some more. So typical size of a sales team really sits between 8 up to 20, I would say.
Nice. Brilliant. That's really useful. And I think just for context, if nothing more, that'd be helpful for people understanding what we get into. So let's start. Let's dig in, because that's what we like to do, get in and get in quickly and start covering ground. The first thing you talked about when we spoke earlier was discounting. So it's obviously something that you've got a fairly clear vision on, things that maybe should be done and shouldn't be done. Can I just hand you a microphone and just tell me, what do you think about discounting in the first place?
So I believe that everybody does it in some form or another. Now, that's not just across sales teams. If we look at really large brands, even Harrods discount, but Harrods do it fantastically well. It's time sensitive. It's, very well promoted. We know that around Christmas, everyone's queuing outside of their store to get the one day event of the year. And there's nothing wrong in principle with offering some sort of reduction, as long as it's not the only reason that's essentially allowing that buyer to purchase, right? Or driving that purchase behavior. The thing that I have not a problem with, but the thing that I find happening an awful lot across sales functions is that the reason why discounts are being applied is because there isn't enough value. And we always talk about this word value, right? What does value actually mean? Because it's perception based. What's value to you, Owen, is might not be what is value to me.
Yeah.
So it's about understanding what's in your sales toolkit. And the thing that I see most of is that actually I could walk into a business, any clients right now, and I could ask, what's your average order value? What's your average discount percentage? Not only as an organization, but on a sales representative basis as well. And you'll find that a lot of people don't know that. Now, the issue you have there is when you then come to think, how can we grow revenue as a business? One of the first and foremost things is, okay, let's look at what we already hold as an organization. And the best way to move the needle on increasing your revenue year on year is focus on the people that are already paying you money. Now, if you can't tell me what your average discount percentage is across a number of services or products, how can you know how much more money you can gain from the account base that you have? What I find, and actually the best question to ask here is, why are people discounting?
Mm-hmm.
And when you start to reflect on potentially why this is happening, it's normally for a number of reasons. One, they don't have confidence in the service or the product.
Yeah.
They don't have a large enough toolkit to feel like they're adding enough value to the buyer, or they're really short-sighted, or it's short-term, vision, in the sense that I want to hit my monthly target. We're in the last week of the month, and actually I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that I earn my commission or hit the monthly target. When realistically, if you look at how that impacts how your brand comes across, or the value of your brand is driven through the discount, people tend to then view your brand as a lower value organization. Give you a perfect example: Pizza Express. Who pays full cost price to eat at Pizza Express? Nobody. Nobody. So the best way that I can kind of give you an example is, if we take 3 restaurants. Okay, so we've got Gordon Ramsay's, we've got Nando's, and we've got Wetherspoons. It maybe, if you can call Wetherspoons a restaurant, but I won't.
Precious was there, but we'll go with it. We'll go with it. It's fine.
Now, straight away, if I say those 3 names to you, you've naturally thought about a price in your mind that you would be willing or expecting to pay for a meal at one of those establishments. Mm-hmm. If I said to you, Owen, would you be happy paying the fixed or the perceived value of a Wetherspoons meal for a Gordon Ramsay meal? You'd bite my hand off.
Yeah.
If I was to then say, actually, you're going to pay Gordon Ramsay prices for a Wetherspoons meal, you'd be like, I'm not even going to walk into the building. Thanks, Lise. And it's about understanding, what can we add to salespeople's toolkits that allow them to build the Gordon Ramsay price in their service that they're offering, so that actually when they come to delivering cost, you're not feeling like you're paying Gordon Ramsay prices for potentially a Wetherspoons meal. And within that, there's various things that you can do. So the first place that I start is with numbers. Always be driven by numbers. Straight away, what's your average order value, Owen? Okay, how many services or products is that across?
Yeah.
On those order values, how many have you discounted? From that, what's the average level of discount that you're now currently looking to offer? And then once we know what the numbers are, we can then build a strategy around how are we going to increase those numbers. And we start with your new accounts, your existing accounts.
Yeah.
So we'll build an elevator pitch. We'll talk about how we're going to go towards the existing accounts, and explain why you're now going to be asking for an increase on the next or the next 3 months, however long your contract order value is. Then we build a separate elevator pitch for new business. And a lot of the time that then comes down to confidence. How can I build your confidence to be able to walk away from somebody that's going to tell you no if you don't give them a discount? And a lot of that is around motivational language. A lot of it is around how you position the sales pitch. So yeah, I mean, discount, I could go on for hours with it, but essentially we don't need to do it as much as we are doing.
I've got 2 questions. It strikes me that one of the reasons people gives discounts is because it's expected, and because it's just, you kind of said, everyone does it, right? And you come across companies who actually build discounting into their sales process, so it's part of the process, and buyers who expect a discount to be a part of the process. I'm assuming well, maybe I'm being really assumptive, but I think it's mental. I think it's absolutely mad that you set a price at £45 an hour, £100 an hour, whatever the starting point is, when you're actually prepared to sell it for 80, and that you'll go to a customer in good faith and pitch 20% above what you're prepared to pay. Because to me, that's a loss of trust straight away. If somebody's going to come to me, price something, and be prepared to take more money than their value as a first interaction, that tells me I can't trust them straight away. Yet companies build that into their strategy. Am I missing something? Do you see it a different way?
I completely agree with you, actually. And that's taken me back to a conversation I had with a client once around, I delivered a proposal and I put the price in, and they came back to me saying, okay, is there anything you can do on price? And this is where you've got to be prepared as a salesperson. One, not only to know the worth of the company that you're in, and also the service and value you can add to the buyer, but the very simple thing that I said was, unfortunately not. I'd send my proposal with the best price to begin with, because actually, how are you going to feel when I then tell you I can discount by X amount?
Yeah.
Straight away, why didn't I go in building the relationship with you on a trust basis, like you've said, to begin with? And it's a really great objection handling technique you can use for people saying, actually, can I? Because you can spin it very well and just say, how would that have made you feel?
Yeah.
Are you going to trust me still?
Yeah, I think it says a lot about an organization if that is built into the strategy. So my second question is when do you discount? Because we've said that everybody does it, and I agree. I think, even people that say they don't do it, there'll be occasions, there'll be times, it might not be a every deal scenario, but here and there, and I think we probably fit into that category. Very rarely do we discount, but we would do it for a reason. What would be those reasons in your head, barring the you're expected to and we just do it, or we've got to hit a short-term target, which are probably the wrong reasons? What are the right reasons to do it?
So for me, this is based around longevity. Okay. And this doesn't mean to say that if you're going to sign up with me 12 months, that I'm going to give you an astronomical discount, because it doesn't work like that, But what you have to look at is the bigger picture. So when, as an organization, we've worked with SMEs, we've worked with companies that are just starting out on their journey. Now, what you have to anticipate is what's the growth trajectory for that organization, and do your brands align? So I've offered, or I've actually given a reduction, and I never call it a discount, because discount just devalues the whole concept anyway. What I have done is I've offered a reduction to begin with on the idea that, hold on a minute, we've got mutual ground here. I believe in what you're trying to build. I understand that as we build this, what will then happen is you'll need other services from us, and I'll look at the bigger picture. Now, safe to say that organisation has stayed with us for 12 months, and we're just signing another agreement for another 12 months. And they came to us and said, hey, we feel you're worth more. Now we've got the money. Can we increase the price? So when there's a mutual understanding or a brand alignment or a just cause, this organization's just cause is phenomenal. I mean, absolutely phenomenal. So when there's a just cause or there's a brand alignment and it's a small reduction because you're helping them for their longer, bigger picture, what that actually does is build more trust. It builds more value with the organization, because you're going to fit with them right. So we're actually now not discounting just to get the deal across the line. You're doing it to genuinely help them to get to where they need to be.
And I like that. I think you've touched on a really interesting point earlier around the data and the numbers. How many organizations that you go and start working with, what percentage, maybe is a better question, don't know those sorts of numbers?
Oh gosh, off the top of my head, I'd say 95.
Amazing.
95. And actually what you might find is the senior leadership team will have an idea around the numbers, but it's not too accurate. But when you get down to the team, no one tracks it. They might be able to tell you what their last week's revenue was or their last month's revenue. But they, off the top of their head, they couldn't tell you how many orders that was across. They couldn't tell you what the average order value was across those, or the average discount percentage.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. And I think if anybody's in a leadership role, whether you're in sales or not, but if you're a commercial role listening to this, it's a piece of advice that comes up in a lot of the conversations I have on this, which is around, you've got to track your numbers, you've got to understand them, you've got to be obsessed with the detail around numbers, and you can learn so much from it. And I love the notion of going and talking to current clients and understanding that actually there's revenue growth without sales, right? There's revenue growth in there just by changing your behavior a little bit. And it's interesting, price changes scare a lot of people. In my experience, you very, very rarely lose a client through a slight price change. It happens, but it's a small percentage, if at all, most of the time.
The important thing to add with that, especially with existing clients, is everyone's okay, or most people are okay when you know what is coming. It's not knowing. So you have a very logical or rational conversation with an existing client around, okay, this is what you've had. We can't continue to do this for this reason, but this is what going to move it to, and we won't do it in one big lump, but what we might do is increase the overall number to this.
Yeah.
And we'll split that across 3 separate months.
Yeah.
It's moving in the right direction, and there's a very clear plan around that. That's why it's important, once you've done the numbers and you've tracked the numbers, to go, okay, but what's the best way to deliver this now?
Yeah. I like it. And you know what? Most of the people you're speaking to have budgets, will be doing the same on the other side at some point, or have done in the last 12 months.
Yeah.
They get it, right? Prices are changing for everybody. They're giving pay rises to their staff. They're, doing annual review, whatever it is. Things are increasing for everybody. So you've got to go with it. It's just life.
Exactly.
It's just the economy.
And actually, I find, so we touched on a little bit earlier about in my business, I have a saying that is, curiosity killed the cat, but made the salesperson incredibly successful. And a lot of the time, just by asking the questions that you would normally be a little bit fearful to ask, or you feel would be intrusive to ask, are where the honest and transparent conversations come from. So in this context, if you were to ask the person on the other end of the phone that's a decision maker that buys and also sells, like you've just said, okay, I'm sure you're doing this your side as well. How is your organization currently dealing or managing current existing accounts or extra services on? It sets the tone, and then it's kind of that light bulb moment of, aha, we're doing this too. Yeah, of course, this makes sense. It's just turning into that sense maker. But asking those questions are really important.
Yeah, love it. Now, let's move along. I want to talk about pipeline management with you, because I know that's something you've got some thoughts around, and we've touched on that in previous conversations. So what's, maybe let's start pretty broad. What are the things that you see with pipeline management? What are the sort of things that you see people do really badly, and what are the things that you see people do really well?
So I'll start with, what even is pipeline management? I think there's so many broad terms of, that's in my pipeline. Well, are they, or have you just picked the phone up and tried to call them? I think the first thing we need to do is get very clear on, how are you gauging what pipeline management is? At which point does it enter your pipeline? How often are you inputting? So for me, there's a couple of things. There's input. So how are you inputting, and what are you inputting, and why are you inputting? Then there's the management of it. Okay, so what's happening with that client during the process of communication with you? And then there's the third point of, how are you following up with this? When was the last time you spoke to them? Why was that the last time you spoke to them? And I'll touch on in a little minute about actionable steps. So worst things I've seen is, one, that there is no good measuring stick. And actually, there's so many different approaches within even the same organization that it's very difficult to be able to figure out. And that I'm numbers driven by now, right? So what number comes out at the end of it? How do you know that number is accurate if everybody's doing it in a different way? You need to be able to understand the measuring stick. The things that I see being done very well is when there's an organization that have a structure around follow-up. So when someone's got a very detailed or structured approach to when they've come in, how you manage that, and then what you're doing with that later down the process, then it can make a world of difference for winning orders and revenue growth, ultimately.
Yeah, and so a lot of this comes back to process again, and I certainly see a lot of people letting sales teams be led by directors who, particularly in the sort of size business you're working with, who aren't necessarily sales leaders. They're not sales scientists. They're not sales processors, sales operation experience, whatever. And so they bring what they think are good salespeople in, maybe. Good talkers, good interviewers, whatever you want to call them. And they expect them to deliver revenue with very little strategy, very little process, and probably very little accountability. And then we get in a scenario where you've got probably quite capable people, but without the strong leadership that would get them there, and certainly without the process. So you're getting into companies, I'm guessing, who are in that situation a fair amount. It feels like you go straight to process. It feels like you're going to look at what you do, why you do, how you do it. And we're looking for a global process that follows across the whole sales team that we can track, measure, and learn from.
Yeah, exactly. And to touch on that, so there's statistics out there that suggest that 50% of your pipeline aren't a good fit for what you do. So I I encourage everyone to have a buyer identification strategy. So how do you identify if somebody is or isn't your buyer before you even pick the phone up to them? Now, we can go along the lines of lookalikes with this. Okay, I have a client that sits in this sector. What are the lookalikes around that? Then you go one step out. So, for example, we do an awful lot of work with media organizations. Now, you've got digital media, you've got outdoor display media, you've got, I don't know, expos, conferences. Now, they're all selling very different things, right? You can either advertise on a billboard, or you can be in a publication, an online journal, or you can have a stand at a show. The means are very different. However, they're all selling the same thing, which is we can get you in front of the desired people that you wish to do business with. So the approach is similar. So when you start looking at building a lookalike model, actually it's like throwing a stone into a pond. Most people concentrate on the first splash. What I'm interested in is going, hold on a second, what's it ripple number 1? What's it ripple number 5? And where are the ripples up to the 10th degree? What you'll find is a common thread across all of them. So you can do that with a buyer identification strategy, and you can get a really good insight into who can I genuinely help. Then you need to be really targeted. You need to be focused, and you need to be strategic. But most importantly, you need consistency. And it's that age-old saying, right? You're not going to go to the gym for 10 hours in one day for 3 months and lose the weight you want to lose. You need to do half an hour to an hour, 3 to 4 times a week. It's all about consistency. So the biggest thing that I see is where people will say, oh yeah, I did lead sourcing at the weekend out of hours, and I did it on a Sunday afternoon and I was prepping. Brilliant. How many hours did you do? What did you find? Did you find anything that was decent? Because I can have spent 3 hours lead sourcing, and actually, because I don't have an identification strategy, they could all be poor leads. Not only that, but I'll think that the Sunday afternoon has prepped me for the whole week. Isn't going to cut it. Just isn't going to cut it. So what are you doing to touch up those, those leads throughout the week? You need the volume, you need the quality, and you need the consistency. Then whilst you're managing that prospect, there's a whole piece here around salespeople, I think, jumping the gun too quickly, in the sense of, oh, wow, I've spoke to them, and whether it's early parts, they're not ready yet, okay, fine, but what's the next actionable step? So even if someone isn't ready to speak to you yet, there's an actionable next step. When might you be ready? Why aren't you ready? And when should I pencil back in to get in contact with you? When you've then had a conversation, or you've been for a meeting and you've done the pitch and you've delivered a price, what happens then? You try and follow up with them. The first thing I'd always advise is you need to get a next actionable step. It's always about what's happening next. So when is that? Why is it? And how is that helping the buyer to be able to navigate further down the buying process? They're the 3 questions you need to be asking. And most people aren't even hitting the first one, not with any sort of conviction, at least anyway. They're going, oh yes, okay, great, I'll catch up with you next week.
Nice.
When? Why? How? That's very different to, Owen, we've had a fantastic conversation today. And this is where the questioning piece comes back in as well, right? Curiosity killed the cat that made the salesperson really successful. When are you looking to get started with this? When are you thinking about implementing this? I'm literally then allowing you to tell me when you're ready. If there was anything stopping you from moving forward, what would it be right now? I'm asking for your objection. And it's those questions that people will try and slip under the radar and not ask because they're fearful of needing to either handle the objection, which there needs, in my opinion, I'm going on my soapbox, I suppose now, there needs to be a better terminology because that's so kind of abrasive, right? Objection handling. No, it's technically a buying signal. If they weren't interested, they'd have got off the phone by now. So we need to think about probably a better terminology around that. But it's asking those tough questions or insightful questions that are leading to okay, well, actually, I'm thinking this right now, or I'm feeling this right now, or this is the reason why I'm a bit shaky right now. Great, let's work through it. Okay, when are you looking? Oh, well, I'm not too sure yet. Interesting. What aren't you sure on? then you can obviously elaborate on that and then kind of move it a bit further. But by the end of that conversation, you need to be having, this is what I understand right now, Owen. It sounds to me like the best time to get back in contact with you then would be next Wednesday. Are you free at 10 a.m.? Okay, great, marvelous. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send you a quick calendar invite. We'll touch on it, but I'll send an agenda in that calendar invite as well of everything that we spoke about, the areas in which you're going to be thinking about over the next couple of days. And what I'll also do is I'll just attach some literature that might help you with that. And what I'll do is I'll finish the call. I'll send the calendar invite probably the next day. So it's the second day that we're touching base with you, and I'll attach just a little case study, or a little bit of nugget of golden information around. Since we last spoke, I think this is going to add a bit of value to you, or this might help you to make your decision. Look forward to speaking to you Wednesday. There's much more substance there.
Love it. Do you know what? It's interesting. I talk a lot about buyer behavior. And I think as salespeople, we allow a buyer to behave a certain way, or we don't. And what we get if we allow a buyer to dictate what next, or if it's not determined, is very bad behavior. When you think about the way that buyers behave to sellers, actually you don't show any respect. You don't answer phone calls. You don't get back to people. You lie to them. You're not honest to them all the time because you choose. You don't want to give that piece of information. We're very guarded. All the bad things in us as humans come out when we're buying something for some reason. And salespeople, by not controlling it, allow that to get worse. Whereas by controlling it, we actually encourage the right behavior. We encourage honesty. We encourage collaboration. We encourage that it's okay to say no to something. It's okay to tell me what's wrong. It's okay to be honest and straight with me. But yet salespeople are afraid to do it. And the word that comes into my mind is bravery. There's a certain bravery that's required in sales to be successful at it. And ironically, it's like anything. It's not actually that scary. When you do it and you get an outcome, you go, oh, that makes sense. It just feels scary the first couple of times. Why is it that we're not seeing that coached into people more? Why is it that that's such a rare skill to find in a salesperson? Yet you and I can sit here and say it's an obvious thing that you must have if you're going to be very successful in sales.
That's an amazing question, and I don't know if I can even answer it. Right. I think probably. So I like to watch Simon Sinek an awful lot. Okay, and he speaks utter sense to me. And if we think about, or we just kind of look over the last few decades of what sales has come from the 80s and 90s to now, I think that has a lot to do with it. And this is just my personal opinion, right? I haven't done any studies or conducted any studies around this, but we were all taught in early days that you needed to always be closing and give them all the information that they need to make them say yes on that one call. It's a very pitch and close sales methodology, and a lot of organizations, there are companies that still pitch and close fantastically well, and it's successful for them, but a lot more organizations are moving much more towards this collaboration and consultative approach. And I think the reason behind it is because the buying model has significantly changed. So there's more people in the purchase decision-making cycle now, more than ever. It's taking longer for people to make more decisions, but most importantly, what do we all have now that we didn't have 20 to 30 years ago? Absolutely world of information at our disposal that we can make decisions on before we speak to anybody that's going to have to make that purchase decision. So personally, I think that we're behind where we need to be. As a sales industry, we need to catch up with how buyers are currently purchasing. And I think that's what it is. It's learned behavior, and what you're really successful salespeople back then and now leaders. And they're teaching the same thing that they were taught. And in order to earn more, you have to learn more.
Brilliant. Do you know, I love it. I don't sit in sales meetings very often, but occasionally I do. And when I'm selling, I love to ask the awkward question. I love to just shake a buyer's or a prospect's behavior out of the pattern, because the moment you get them out of the pattern, they realize they can be honest with you. It becomes natural, and that conversation changes. So I like to do that really early in a conversation. Ask something they're not expecting you to ask, that other salespeople won't. And what amazes me is it's actually not that hard to do that, because most salespeople aren't asking anything out of the normal straight and narrow. So you only need to ask one or two things, and suddenly you get a human. versus a buyer. And I think that is the big difference. And I think that's a real takeaway for people, particularly individual contributors who are out selling, sitting in meetings, whatever at the moment. Even more so virtually, that becomes so much more important because you haven't got the physical connection, the eye contact in the same way. It's a great way to differentiate yourself in the sales process, is ask those challenging questions, get them thinking. Sometimes it can be, you know, as simple as saying, I don't know, why wouldn't you buy from us? You know, why wouldn't you buy from us? What is it about? What if we were not right for you? What would be that thing? You know, and just get them thinking outside of the normal questions. Other times it might need to be a bit more extreme, but you know, I don't think it's hard to do. And once you do it once or twice, you realise that you get a good reaction. So that's a fantastic takeaway from today. You've touched on something here, and I love this phrase. I'm going to get you to repeat it around curiosity killed the cat, but it made, what was it?
It makes a salesperson incredibly successful.
I love that. So curiosity is interesting, right? Because I don't think you can fake curiosity.
No.
And I think we train salespeople to go into discovery, ask lots of questions, and what you get is a survey. So do you do that? How many of these do you do? So why is it such a powerful tool in sales?
So that the first thing that's just sprung to my mind is you've said, I don't think you can fake it. I'm like, no, you can't. Hold on. So have you ever heard of that phrase, fake it till you make it, right? It was really popular. And I remember starting my sales career like 15 years ago, and they were like, fake it till you make it. I'm like, what does that even mean? What do you mean by that? What am I faking? Are the products fake? You know, and actually what I kind of started to learn with that is they mean show that you're interested beyond how interested you really are. And they meant curiosity, because as natural human beings, we like to talk about what we do or what we have or what we're doing. And as soon as you can get someone talking about themselves, they open up to you. It's come on in, you know. I don't think you can fake genuine curiosity. Okay, so I'll take you back from when I was a little girl, and we went to a Disneyland trip when I was about 5, and I got told I couldn't go to Cinderella's castle. And lo and behold, half an hour later, my parents were frantically running around Disneyland Orlando and couldn't find where I was. And I was with Cinderella in her castle.
Of course you are.
Absolutely, right? Because I was curious. I wanted to see where she lived. I wanted to experience it. And actually, experience drives purchase behavior, not cost. So linking this quite nicely back to our discounting earlier, once you realize as a sales individual that the experience you have with that person and the emotional commitment or the emotional relationship you start building drives purchase, you then become less fearful of delivering a cost in the first place, because do you know what? That's just a transactional output of doing business. That's not what you're getting. That's what you pay, right? It's not what are you achieving from this? And only curiosity will bring that out, you know? So I want to know all about you. I'm nosy. I want to know, you know, what do you like doing? How do you manage the team? If I flip it into what we do as an organization from a coaching or a recruitment piece, what's the most successful person in your business and why are they most successful? What is happening right there and then in a daily basis that makes them top performer? Equally, who is the person, and this is a great question and one of those ones that kind of shake it up a bit, who's the person that contributes the most amount of value to the organization but is not your top biller? Because I can guarantee you there's someone in that business that will be driving a team, that will be the kind of glue between them all, that adds something to the culture that you can't put a price on, you know? And that really gets people thinking. And I care about that because I'm about to find you someone new for your company. So I care about what you care about. Curiosity is it's also really catchy. If I'm curious about you, you're more curious about me, right? If I'm showing real interest in what you do and how you do it, not only do you want to share it more openly, but you tend to find that you go to this another level of conversation, that you say things that you weren't planning on saying, you discuss things you weren't planning on discussing, you're down a rabbit hole, but equally it's all built to the trust and value in the relationship moving forward.
Yeah. Do you know what? I think you and I could probably talk for about another 3 or 4 hours about this stuff. Yeah, we're off on one now, aren't we?
Yeah.
It's brilliant. It's
Rabbit
brilliant.
holes.
Yeah. We've got one more topic I want to talk about quickly, and then we'll wrap up. Recruitment. So you obviously do a lot of recruitment for salespeople, or for sales teams, and it's a tough gig at the moment. It's the market is as hard as it's ever been to recruit good salespeople, or just to recruit salespeople, let alone recruiting good ones. What, as somebody who's involved in that, what's your take on it at the moment? What should organisations be doing to get ahead? What can we do, and why is it the state that it's in right now?
Again, I haven't done any surveys, but my gut feeling is one of two things. Okay,
Yeah.
so we've had a really difficult 18 months for a security and stability sense for candidates. You know, if you've been lucky enough to be with an organisation that have looked after you or furloughed you, or you've managed to keep hold of your role, that's absolutely fantastic. Even for the ones that weren't lucky enough, you've had to pivot. I mean, that word has just been so much used in the last 18 months, but even coming down to sales individuals, they've had to pivot in order to find something that they can do on a day-to-day basis because the roles haven't been there.
Yeah.
Now what's happened is it's kind of done a 180, and everyone's opened back up, and they're like, I've got all of these roles, please come in. And yeah, and candidates are just reluctant to move. That coupled with this time of year, normally candidates will stay put till Christmas anyway. Who's gonna move roles just before Christmas, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't make sense. So I think with that, the landscape is really tough for employers right now finding candidates, and we've seen things where we're putting roles up on numerous job boards, and normally we'd have about 50 applicants. We're now lucky to get 3. You know, yeah. So, but the fun bit of this, right? So the real kind of great element to this is my team is super busy, and they're super busy by being creative now, because what that's allowed the role to do is completely open up, do some creative filming, talk about the roles themselves, putting it out on LinkedIn, doing some quirky shoots across the office. People get the brand a little bit better, they get to know a bit more about the role, it's more interactive. They're getting to experience a bit of kind of marketing in the sense that they've got to market their role now across either Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, you know, Twitter or TikTok. So you've just got to be more proactive.
Like it. Yeah.
For any salesperson, you're always more successful when you're proactive anyway, right? You should never be reactive.
Yeah. Really good point. Look, I think it's a really good take on the market. Really good take on the market. You're in it, so I'd like to have thought that's what I would get, but yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely a battle, and I think it's great advice around being proactive, being creative, finding ways to be curious about it. How can I get better? How can I do this differently? And standing out from the crowd. Yeah.
And I suppose the thing that you need to ask yourself is, am I going to find somebody who absolutely loves to buy or eat steak in a vegan restaurant? And I know that's probably a poor example, right? You know,
dragged it by their partner.
You know, yeah. But the thing is, and the moral of that is, you need to go to where the candidates actually are, not where you think they are or used to them being. And they're there. You've just got to find them.
Yeah, love it. Lisa, talk to me about who should be reaching out to you, who should be talking to you, who can you help?
Okay, so any organization that wants to develop their sales team, that sit inside a solution sales led proposition or conceptual sales proposition, we can add a lot of value in the sense of streamlining in revenue growth, looking at your processes, making sure you're tracking the numbers, getting your team to not discount as heavy, and build a real strategy around revenue growth for the next quarter. Alternatively, if you come out of the last 18 months thinking, okay, brilliant, we're not surviving, but we now want to thrive, and you're looking for new top sales talent, we can also help with that. How do we do it? We do it a bit differently to most. So we like to match a candidate and company with their sales methodologies more than just experience, because once you do that, you have longevity, which in turn, as an employer, what that helps you with is not spending as much money on recruitment because the new people stay with you.
Like it. So you're looking for people who have the experience is nice, but the methodology similar. So the way we sell and looking for that fit between that, and that you found that to be a really important part of the fit and the longevity.
Absolutely. So most people would put that under culture. Now, culture to me is something completely different. Okay, that's your morals. That's what you stand for as a business. That's a consultative sales approach. But when you start talking about real sales methodologies and how do you follow up? What are your touch points? What's your average sales cycle? How do you like to be led? That's the sales methodology.
Yeah, fantastic advice. Lisa, thank you. How can people get in touch with you? What's the best way to get in touch with you if they want to talk?
So I'm on LinkedIn, Lisa Dempster. Or alternatively, you can contact the office, which is 01782 528 464, or drop me an email at lisa@salesconsult.co.uk.
Brilliant. Lisa, thank you ever so much for joining us today. Really enjoyed chatting. Learnt a few things as well, and I'm going to take that phrase with me if that's okay. I think it's a fantastic phrase. We might even title this with that phrase.
Thanks for having me, Owen.
Pleasure. Thank you.